Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. I think that we'll have to make sure. Oh, is that a little too loud?
Today's June the 6th, the invasion
D-Day.
of Normandy.
D-Day.
Remember them.
Don't worry, I did remember them. But in my own little strange way. Richard? Good. No, you can have your own plate. No, you can have your own plate. She does not have the right to tell you what to eat.
I was just trying to slap his hand for touching my plate.
Oh. Hey, we keep our hands to ourselves. I know. Nancy, I think you're. All right, I tell you what, why don't we begin? So, let's begin in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. So, before we start this class, just want to point out that this is the Caldwell. She's in the pink, he's in the hat. And today is, as you know, an anniversary of D-Day. And on D-Day, they chose to get married 59 years ago. So, congratulations. See, what else? Oh, so also, I have to remember, I totally forgot about this until I was just told. Next week is Vacation Bible School. So we're going to have this class skip next week and then resume the week after that. And we still need sign-ups for 2 weeks from now for food. So thank you, everybody who did bring food. Now, this class is going to be on church architecture, kind of. It will be. What I want to do is go through different centuries of church architecture, except for really the next two classes. or this class. This class and the next class, I'm actually starting with really big history. So I really look forward to this class. I want it to be kind of fun and informative, but I do want to work up to Gothic and Baroque and modern. But I want to start really 10,000 years ago. Or I'm not taking questions now, ma'am. I know you don't have a class. I know exactly what you're going to say. And D-Day, my ordination, and their wedding anniversary.
And that ordination day, bless the church.
Oh, well, thank you. We'll see. So it's church architecture. So that's kind of starts. I want to start with really big history. And there is a reason I'm going to work this into church architecture, but you won't know it until we get into 3 classes from now. But you'll pick up the themes. And I want to start with really big history and go with the Stone Age. So the Stone Age is called Paleolithic, Old Stone. Then you have the Neolithic, and then the Megalithic. And then you have the Iron Age and the Bronze Age. And you have to think, well, why do you want to start with Stone Age? Because I tell you, you probably never notice. I always give this image of being serene and peaceful. But all I really remember are things that irritated me. And this one woman said to her son when I was at Holy Apostles, said to her son, well, Stone Age people, cavemen, they didn't have religion. And yes, they did. We know not everything, but we know a lot archaeologically about Paleolithic human beings. And here's the odd part. They did have religion. Can't tell a lot, but we can tell something. And I mention this because I think it's very human to actually worship and create worship space. And even non-humans, this sounds kind of strange, Neanderthals, they're different than human beings, right? And Neanderthals, they would have been, if you put them in a suit and tie, pretty indistinguishable between modern man. Believe it or not, they look just like us. They would have been just shorter. They would have been stronger, quicker. They had the same brain capacity, except they had a occipital bun in the back of their head. We are known for our frontal cortex. But we don't know what changes that brain change would have made. But here's the amazing part. In this cave, and actually it would be Iraq, in the Shinar cave, they discovered all these Neanderthal grave sites. Now that should shock you. Grave sites. So anyone who buries their own, that's a little bit odd, right? But not only that, we knew ritually what they were doing. And they were obviously very compassionate, believe it or not. I know the images of these Neanderthals walking like this, that's just Hollywood. They would have been upright, quicker, stronger than us, but here's the amazing part. Lived in groups, but we did not live in caves. Neanderthals actually did. But they buried their dead in caves. And not only buried it, but they had a ritual. Now, I don't want to get too much into this, but they were actually compassionate because they found one Neanderthal grave was of a 40-year-old who had a deformed arm and leg. But if he's 40 years old, born that way, that meant the community took care of him. Does that make sense? They took care of each other. And they gave each other funeral rites. That should shock you. They not only buried them, but then they buried them, and then they would put a ring of goat's horns around it, then weavings of flowers. And then this one person who, amazing, checked out what the flowers were based on the pollen. They were all flowers that were healing. And then they spread red ochre over the top, and then more earth, and then a fire, and then had a meal. Like, doesn't that kind of shock you? Neanderthals had a funeral rite. And so, that was just Neanderthals. Human beings, same things. Now, that burial site is 45,000 years old. Now, it's very artistic. But my point being is that we also know early humans had burial rites. And how this relates is like Adam and Eve, it says, prayed. Now, we're used to that because we're religious. But Adam and Eve prayed. It says about Seth and his descendants that they called on the name of Yahweh. Now, that should be strange because the name Yahweh is not going to be revealed until Moses. But they called on the name Yahweh, which means humans always practice some sort of religion. So when it comes to Paleolithic man, I really didn't define that, but maybe I should. So real quick, Paleolithic man celebrates the cognitive revolution. That 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens evolved the frontal cortex, so we're really good at thinking and storytelling and imagination. So that's the Paleolithic man. They're often called caveman, even though we didn't live in caves. And then later, 10,000 BC, is the Neolithic man. Neolithic man is basically the agricultural revolution, farming, which changed the world. But most of human history, if you think about it, is never recorded. Writing is a very modern invention. So we rely heavily upon archaeology. And early Paleolithic man, we were nomadic hunters and gatherers. We had stone tools, we had leather, we had fishing tools, we had rafts, some musical instruments. We cooked food with fire, which gave us a greater brain capacity. Geographically, we tend to stick to the shores because we really were noted for fishing. So this is my theory. I don't know much. But, human beings, unlike apes, we have a subcutaneous layer of fat, right? Unlike a dog where, you can pull the skin out. You've never done that? But think about this. Only humans, whales, and dolphins have subcutaneous layers of fat like us. So we are really meant, ancient-wise, lived next to the shores. So biologically, Paleolithic mans, this is kind of surprising, had strong bones, good teeth, and good health. They were actually really good health. So Hobbes was wrong. Life was not short, nasty, and brutish. The cognitive revolution gave us the ability to tell stories. Early humans were hunters and gatherers, and they spent a lot of time apparently telling stories. And that's really important. I'll never forget, I was on this paseo when I was in South America with these really peasants. And we were just sitting by this fire, and they could recite poetry. Not poetry from books, but just make it up. And it made me think, oh my God, these peasants, farmers, are poets at heart. So the ability that we had in Paleolithic man is storytelling, creating words. And the first ingredient in religion is awe, that they lived close to nature. And so like on this paseo with the peasants, they could just make up poetry and tell stories. Religion is a way of seeing the world and of awe. So that's the great revolution of the Paleolithic man, was actually storytelling. And the Paleolithic home was the community, not a structure. Paleolithic man would have lived in circular, transportable dwellings, but their home was not four walls. Their home was the community. So remember, human beings are the most highly evolved species, social species. We're naturally to live in a tribe. That's all you could really say about their homes. That's why I think loneliness and psychotropic antidepressants are on the rise is because there's more loneliness because we're not truly living in communities anymore. To end loneliness, you need to be with other people, and you need to be in it together, closely knit, working together. Paleolithic people didn't either survived or died by fitting into the community. So the community was survival. And religion, we know a little about religion because, believe it or not, these great cave art. So this is how it relates to church architecture. Art was very significant to Paleolithic man. You have ancient man drawings, paintings, reindeers. So think about this. We have painting of reindeers. And you've never seen 10,000 reindeers ever paint a picture of a man. What you have is humans painting pictures of other animals. Art is indicative of what it means to be a human being. And so the first time these cave paintings are discovered was actually in France. And this scientist knew that there had to be stone artifacts in this one area because they were found. So he kind of thought, I'm going to go into the caves and see if I can find any of these artifacts. And this is called Altamira, which means look up in Spanish. Except one day he brings his little girl, and he's searching the ground. And he brings his little girl. At one point, the girl, because they have this lantern, says to her father, Mira, means look. Mira, oxen. Oddly enough, the scientist never bothered to look up. And when he looks up, there's this huge cave painting all around him. And the beauty of it is people couldn't believe that this was actually real, that ancient man could have had such great artwork. It's actually incredibly beautiful. But not only did they paint these caves, but some just bulls, caves. It's just, to me, incredible artwork from, tens of thousands of years ago. But like, here's one. On the bulge of the rock, they turned that bulge into the shoulder of a bull. So it wasn't just cave painting. It was in 3D with all the well, this one that I'm showing, there's actually thousands, is what they discovered, from the Middle East clear up throughout Europe. Thousands of these caves. And so when you walk around with a torch, the animals, because of the bulge, they start to look like they're actually moving. It's this really 3D thing. So you have these dark caves lit up by these stone lamps, and they found stone lamps in these caves that would flicker, that would make the animals look like they're running. And after they were discovered, some thought that they were so staged and painted that they were too beautiful and complex for the primitives. And so there's this prejudice, which is still alive today, that anything that's primitive or ancient can't be beautiful. And that little girl who said, look up, later is an old woman, their main critic, who said their father painted it. Afterwards, they find thousands of these caves from Iraq, Iran, all over the place with, and this is important, the same paintings and symbols in these caves. They accused her father of being a fraud, made her life difficult, and later the guy apologizes. But here's the odd part. There is a constellation of these painted caves throughout Europe and Asia Minor. And this is the oldest art in the world that was created between 10,000 and 40,000 years ago. Isn't that amazing? And over the last century, more than 350 of these artworks have been found just in Europe, with all the same animals, all the same abstract art, and occasionally even human beings. These are human beings and shaman. But not only did they find art and torches, they also found some musical instruments. And the caves were selected for their echoing. At one point of the cave, there's always some curved wall that they would have to go to. that would resonate the sound. And that's where they found these instruments. Now, that's going to be key in about 4 lectures from now. Because, no, it really will. Because you'll think, well, why are Catholic churches having apse, the curved corner? You know what I mean, what an apse is? Anyhow, so the caves were picked for their musical resonance. So once again, you have this now connection between art. Religion is art and music. And so they found rattles and really a xylophone, really made out of ribs. But it was chosen for echoes. So to me, that's absolutely amazing. So you have all these great artwork. There's handprints of what looks like all the handprints are that of teenagers. I think I missed one. Oh, here. The same 32 symbols are found in all these hundreds of caves. The most important is a spiral, but all these symbols. So, well, what do you mean? From Asia Minor, there wasn't a language, but there was a symbolicness to it all. So you have music. Now, nobody actually lived in the caves. That's really important. The caves were not used for living. Now, there's only 3 colors found, red, yellow, and black. And I know that sounds strange, but you can make those with ochre. And humans won't be able to make any, like the color blue, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. That's a really difficult one. So you have the same colors, the same shapes, the same 32 geometric signs that are 30,000-year time span. So they're not random doodles. They're not decorations, or they would have changed. They're repeating symbols throughout. And I just think that's absolutely amazing. Oh, yikes, I forgot my other notes. So now I have to run to my office. But what else? Okay, so, and you'd make these handprints by blowing the ochre on it. But the most important part is that, they're like 13, 14-year-old kids' hands. So what were these caves used for? So let me tell you. What they suspect is this. 1, religious ceremonies. At this point, we're nomadic. But throughout these caves, and there's a whole constellation, they're known for sound, for pointing towards certain star constellations. So you have astronomy, art, music, and with these animals being painted on it, they found that there's tappings. I went too far. That's the wrong one. Tappings on it. So, and on the sides of the wall, all female animals on one side and male animals on another. So most likely there are rites of passages. Does that make sense? And the tapping is image of hunting. And they had shamans on it, which means, okay, that's a religious image. What else? So not only that, but they found the dead buried outside. And death is once again a passage. Does that make sense? So it was probably used as rites of initiation from childhood into adulthood. All primitive societies, rites of initiation become very important, which I think we're missing today. Because, like, let's say you're a teenager. And when you're a teenager, the community just takes care of you. But if you exist that way, you're now a threat to the community. You have to become part of the community and hunt and produce. Does that make sense? So what would happen if a society had full-grown adults that expect the rest of the community to take care of them the rest of their life? So, you know, when it's survival, you had these rites of initiation. You had funeral rites. So my point being is that, wow, that's really interesting. It's the cave. Now, I have to mention this. I'm going to keep repeating the cave over and over. It's a huge theme when it comes to architecture. Cave and mountain. Cave and mountain is always together. So That's what. Now, I need to run to my office and get the rest of my notes because some idiot didn't put them up here. So I'm going to move into Neolithic man, which I find even more stunning. So any questions about the caves and Neolithic man? Yes. Isn't that amazing? So the great bit of human history was really when we were hunter and gatherers. But storytelling, so religion has to do with architecture and art and astronomy and music and rites of initiation and, I forgot one more. It was just in my head. Something else about these caves. Rites of initiation. Storytelling. Because the difference between us and Neanderthals, storytelling can unite a community. Yeah, I know that sounds kind of strange, but if we have a story, we can become united together. Neanderthals, they could only be in small, tiny little groups. Our storytelling allowed us to be in large groups and believe a certain thing. So the caves, if it's rites of initiation, it also involves storytelling about initiating responsibilities. In these caves, and this sounds kind of strange, the spiral, it's going to come up later in huge amount in Neolithic man, but later in Irish art and Irish crosses. The spiral, and you'll get this next one, really seems to mean death or transition. But you have all these spirals too. So, any other questions? Yes? They're just hieroglyphics. They seem to be ideas, but not words. Does it stun you as much as it stuns me? Because people say, oh, cavemen, yeah, they did have a religion. We know about something about it. Now, I want to move to Neolithic man. So let me take a really quick break, quickly run to my office, and I am firing the person who didn't put my notes up there. Forgot my notes. Okay, I'm going to go back to the caves. So the thing about these caves, it's not art for art's sake. It's art for worship. And the thing about the importance of the cave is you would pass from darkness into light. And so that's why they thought the cave was about rebirth. And there's a study called ethnographic parallelisms. And that is, what is the parallelisms between ancient primitive societies? And it's about initiation rituals. And in primitive societies, guess where rituals of initiation took place? Caves. They were in caves. Now, this is odd. From Chile to ancient Greece, Malta, Ireland, the Pyrenees, all these rites of initiation were always caves. And so, like the caves, these have these imprints and all this other stuff. And so you have all this. So primitive societies, they use caves and mountains. I just think it's absolutely amazing of the parallel between South America, North America, the Europe, Middle Asia Minor, is rebirth always happens in a cave. So, so architecture was dealt with this idea of rebirth. I'm missing some. I don't want that one. I don't want that one. That's a shaman. This is ancient wood carving of a shaman that often have a headdress and with music. So you have these shamans. So there was sort of some sort of religious leader as well. So he's not dressed as a hunter either. He has these special clothing and the drum and often bird images. The shamans are the images that they're not completely human, they're other. So that's what the headdress means. And he's dancing. So once again, dancing, art, music, religion. So the shamans, oddly enough, are almost all identically dressed alike, from Russia to the Middle East, even Native Americans. So unlike Neolithic humans, Paleolithic humans, the really old ones, didn't have much specialized lives because it was a whole community, right? But there was specialized work for religious. That's kind of odd. I could get more into that, but I don't want to because I want to get... and here's one of the main points. Not only rites of initiation, but all these caves, doesn't matter if you pick South America or the Shandar caves, it's all connected to death as well. So religion is connected to art and music and dancing, rites of initiation, and most importantly, it's a connection to the dead. So when they buried the dead, they buried them, and this Paleolithic man buried them with rock art and jewelry and small sculptures. So Paleolithic man may have possessed this idea of an afterlife, because if you have the concern for the dead that transcends the daily life, I mean, if they truly believe once you're dead, why would you bury them with jewelry? Why would you bury them with their possessions? They must have believed in some afterlife. Now, here's the really odd part, too. See if I can find that. There is what it's called Venus or Mother Earth. Did I show it? Yeah, sorry. Nope, that just speds up. Somebody didn't arrange these well. Okay, here it is. So this is, she's beautiful. She's known as either Venus or Mother Earth. They found these in Paleolithic man. The only statues they found was this Mother Earth status. And the feet are actually pointed so that they can seem to fit in the ground. They come to a point so that you can shove them in the ground. And she has braided hair, and that sounds kind of odd. Always braided hair. So Paleolithic women probably braided their hair. And these Mother Earth images are most commonly found in front of the caves at the burial sites. So once again, it's not art for art's sake. It's a burial. And on them are this number 13 that comes up a lot with the moon. So whatever mother goddess this is, she has these 13 marks. So that's just this one. We're talking they found hundreds of these. It's always the 13 marks around her. Anybody know what the 13 would be if you're a really primitive society? It's the phases of the moon. So primitive society often don't work on a solar cycle, but a lunar cycle. So like ancient Jews, when you hear about Mary being in the 4th month of pregnancy, in the lunar cycle, it's 10 months of pregnancy, not 9. So the Jewish calendar is lunar-based. All major things in the Bible happen lunar. But so this Mother Earth is ringed with 13, which is a lunar. Now, notice what they didn't find. Notice what they didn't find. What didn't they find? warfare. Now, except they wouldn't have had metal, but there's no mass murder grave sites that they found. They seem to be burial. War is going to happen a little bit later. So what we did find lasting evidence is art and architecture and worship. War only comes about when we develop economy. So I know this sounds kind of strange. We survived because of religion. We employed art and storytelling to unite us together. Religion gave us an EQ, emotional quotient, for a purpose. Our beginnings was in caves. These are the ancient cathedrals for art and music and ritual and places for the dead. This is where the beginning of religion was. And so my theory, it's not my theory, it's common theory, that God took tens of thousands of years to give us a religious language. So think about this. In all these caves, that's another one, not only did you have rites of initiation, but they were coupled with meals. Meals and meals and meals. And even like, even the, Neanderthals, they had a meal over somebody else's grave. So religion doesn't seem to be, when people say the invention of human beings, it's not the invention of human beings. Human beings are religious. That's a much different way of seeing the world. Dang it. Still missing my notes. Because I want to get to, I'm going to have to walk back to my office, but somebody else is going to get fired today. I'm not sure who, but I want to move to Neolithic man, and that's when things really heat up. That's the agricultural revolution. Okay, sorry about that. So we're going to start with Neolithic man. And Neolithic man, what it basically means is the agricultural revolution. So for beginning about 10,000 years ago, ending in about 45,000, the agricultural revolution took place. And what we did was domesticate wild animals. Primarily, beginning with one of the key ones, was actually dogs. Humans and dogs have been together for 10,000 years. There it is. I need to switch up. So humans and, well, that's nice, but that's, okay, remember this symbol because I put it in the wrong one. Just remember that. So now I have to figure out where I am. But, so I'm obviously not really good at working the computer. So now we're, Neolithic. Oh, shoot, I don't see it. That's not what I wanted. Oh, dang, that's not what I wanted. Oh, well, okay. So, what we began to do is domesticate animals, dogs, certain ones, and plants. So this sounds kind of strange. They found the remains of figs outside Jericho that date to 9,400. And figs are a mutated version that can't be pollinated by insects. So the trees are reproduced from cuttings. So that's how old farming is. And the advantage of farming is that it gave us a regular food supply. We didn't have to travel around. It gave us pottery and food storage. So you have this boom when farming comes. They built granaries. They began pyrotechnics, becoming really good at fire. This is the amazing part. Started to paint on plaster. Now, if you're wondering, what are you looking at? It's this Neolithic city. It's the remains of this Neolithic city. And here is, I missed it. This Neolithic city. And farming, farming, you need a lot of hands so you can have more children and larger families to support farm work. And so you have not only an explosion of technology, but you have an explosion of human population. So farming allows this growth. Plus you have migration. This sounds kind of strange. Parallelisms. Remember I mentioned ancient societies have parallelisms. One of them is the Great Flood story. Almost every human religion has a story of the Great Flood. So they think there probably was a great flood, and this great archaeologist, Ryan, discovered that where the Black Sea was human development underneath. And so probably where the flood took place is that Bosphorus, where the Bosphorus is, the wall would have broke, so the sea, along with a storm, would have come pouring in. Does that make sense? In the flood story, it says that the water rose up from the bottom and from the top. So they think archaeologically that's probably where it was, because every society also has a flood story. But my point being is you have now these human compounds. You have the beginning of specialized work, the beginning of science with domesticated animals, the manipulation of environment, and most importantly, boats. They cross the Bosphorus. And since they start to spread out, so first, it's actually, you'd think like Turkey is where ancient man was. They spread out until they reach Ireland. Do you know what they figure archaeologically the first animal to be domesticated 10,000 years ago was? Snails. I know, isn't that odd? Dogs were very, very popular too. But architecturally, things changed. Paleolithic man, primitive man, lived in circular compounds. Now they move from circles to square homes. So what this Ryan discovered is, they're pretty shocked, is, I can't find it in my thing, but what Ryan found is we'll see if I put it someplace else. What Ryan found is really these whole cities that were, no, must have messed it up. He found these whole cities. They would look like adobe dwellings of the Southwest. That very square. They wouldn't have had streets. And I had illustrations. I forgot to. I sometimes work when I'm on the phone to prepare for this class. I don't have a lot of time, but the illustration is good because it looks like adobe. But they have these. The didn't have doors. They entered from the roof, and then they pulled up the ladders at night, and then they had the fires inside. And somehow they could tell from the bones that they had a lot of soot in their lungs, so their health actually decreases. What's that?
Bomb shelters.
Yeah, but it's square. They wouldn't look like those adobes of the pueblos. What's that? I know, but it's not the right one. But so imagine these, he first found one in Lower Turkey that was 32 acres, but no streets. Isn't that absolutely amazing? But you know what really shocked him the most? Is when they go, they have these homes, but then every cluster of homes, he was shocked to find chapels. And you remember you buried your dead outside caves? And guess where the Neolithic man buried our dead ones? In the chapels. The floor of the chapel were the deceased. In fact, they just kept burying more and more in the floor. So have you ever walked around like a European cathedral? I was just a while ago with a friend of mine who wasn't Catholic, and I was showing him the Cathedral of Milan, and you walk over, and he said, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, it's somebody's grave." And he's shocked. You would bury somebody in a church? And my answer was, humans have been doing that for 10,000 years. Like, that should shock you, because they said, some people would put the propaganda out. Ancient man didn't have a religion. They actually buried the dead like planters. Think these are farmers. They plant them in the community. They don't leave the dead behind. And once again, they bury dead with jewelry and objects. They must have believed in some afterlife. And there was altars in these chapels. And the altars had horns on them. Why, can you think, why are horns so important? Well, if you know the Bible, right, is that where you're going? In the Bible, the Hebrews, when it mentions horns, the horns of the altar, that's the corners, is these altars actually did have horns on them. So you'd think, well, why did the ancient Hebrews put horns on their altar? Because bull is a sign of strength. Does that make sense? And they put horns on the altar. And so it's like, wow, okay, the Bible is a little bit more true. Here's the odd part. Do you remember that story of Cain and Abel? Anybody read that one? Think about this. Cain and Abel. Abel symbolizes the nomadic hunter life. Cain, the farmer's life. And I hate to say this, with farming comes not only technology, but cities. Who's the father of cities? Cain. Farming also gave rise to war. Now you have to defend your territory. Does that make any sense? So, it's kind of archaeologically shocking. So they had these bulls in their chapel as well, but once again, an altar, what do you do with an altar? Sacrifice. But a sacrifice is a meal. They'd have these sacred meals with the dead. So religion now has architecture and altar and reels. This is Chakuta. Anyhow, this is an amazing part. And with the plaster that they'd put, humans discovered frescoes. And the most common symbol was a dancing bull. Now, dancing bull is going to be a really huge for thousands and thousands of years. And they made it 3D like the cave so that they would build up the plaster at one point so the shoulder was there. That's the amazing part. And then they had these benches all around in the chapel. So they wanted to live their lives in some sort of communion with the dead. I think that's really interesting. Once again, what they found, the one statue they found all over the place was the Mother Goddess. Except now, instead of just burial places, they found her in the chapel, but also in granaries. She's found all over the place. So in Ur, where this one archaeologist, Woolley, found Ur. And that's pretty shocking because it says Abraham came from Ur, a city of idols. So that was revolution. Oh, there is such a place as Ur. That's where Abraham came from. And it's one of these Paleolithic cities, not made of bricks, but mud. Bricks will be a later invention. But that absolutely shocked people. And then they discovered in some of these burial places one of what seems to be a very, some sort of queen. And this is really shocking. She was buried with like 30 attendants and soldiers. And her attendants, they were buried where they had these silver ribbons in their hair. And one of the symbols that was really shocking, that in Ur, they had a picture of a ram with his head caught in a thorn tree. Why is that shocking? Right. That's a symbol of Abraham, of the sacrifice of Abraham, but it's also seemed to be a pre-existing symbol as well, and found in the city of Ur. And they buried this one queen with attendants and soldiers, not murdered, but voluntarily died, so that when she went to the afterlife, she also had her attendants. So clearly, Neolithic man believed in some sort of afterlife as well. Does that make any sense?
And they knew that women would rule the world.
That's the really odd part. They've tried to figure this out, but in many of these burials, you didn't, the stratification of women versus men, there's no evidence of that in Paleolithic or Neolithic man, which should shock you. You kind of think women would be treated as dirt. That actually comes about as the Bronze Age, where you have the stratification of society. So anyhow, my point being is that, getting back to it, here's the point. Where was the Garden of Eden? No, I mean, okay. Sorry, the Garden of Eden is a mountain. Does that make sense? The Garden of Eden is a mountain. Heaven is pictured as the top of a mountain. On the very top of the mountain is the tree of life, which has part of God's Spirit in it, if you could eat that. But think about this. Mountains are a place for God. Caves are a place for rebirth, for initiation. So you're going to have this continuous image, even in cathedrals, of mountains and caves. You enter the cave to be reborn. Does that make sense? But the top of the mountain is for God. Does that make any sense? So when you talk about church architecture, these cathedrals, you still have this theme of mountain and cave and rebirth and initiation. Does that make sense? Except instead of painting on the walls, we have stained glass and art. Okay, I just love that stuff. So we've gone about an hour. I hope I haven't bored you. But I want this because I don't want people to think, well, you just made that up in the Middle Ages. Well, no, really. We didn't. It seems to be humans. Now, the next step we're going to take in 2 weeks, not next week because I forgot we had Vacation Bible Study, is megalithic structures. Megalithic structures will blow your straw. What's that? What's that? Megalithic. Mega means big stone. And the shocking part is it's everywhere. And once again, megalithic structures are really the very, very first cathedrals. The stones, the caves are, you'd say, the proto-example, but the megalithic structures really become the first cathedrals. Okay, questions, objections? Confusing? Do you find it as fascinating I do that humans always had a religious streak to them? Now, I have to tell you, I'm going to get, because I know some of you are a little sensitive, I'm going to criticize the artistic style of our church when we get going. But really, think about this. Even Paleolithic man, the best art was in the caves. Churches should be a place of art. And you'll find out connecting astronomy, so science, of music and art. They didn't build their homes that way. They built their religious spots that way. So, yes? I never argue. I never argue. I believe in the story of the Bible, but when you say strictly, they mean their own interpretation. They don't, I just think there's stunning how much archaeology has supported the Bible. Oh, that's a really good question. I haven't thought of that. Um, hmm. Well, all I can say for sure is our health went down and we gained war. But we got farming. I think it's, what's that? Maybe. I just think it's kind of, I guess there's always a price with every transition. And here's the thing. I know this sounds, I want to teach a class later on this. You know, it's also a consistent theme. It's not it's like number 9 or something way down there. One of the themes of the Bible is city. City, city, city. Like heaven is a city. And so you have, cities can either be a source of great evil or great justice and peace and unity. It's either or. But city is a really big theme, but it stunned archaeologists that, wow, 10,000 years ago, we had small cities, 32 acres of these connected houses. And heaven is also pictured as a city of compact unity. So, yeah, somebody over there had a question, yeah. Mm. Oh, no problem. I love this. I just love it. So, but eventually we'll get to cathedrals, but that really won't happen until we get to the Romanesque period. So, yes. Yeah. They are, but it's still, like, I hate to say it, humans haven't changed that much in 10,000 years. We still build mountains and caves to enter to them, to contact with the divine, and artwork. Reindeers have yet to paint a picture of me. All right, God bless. I have a funeral, so see you in 2 weeks. It's Chris's birthday too? She's having another birthday? You guys were